to cloud. All right, I am here with Anastasia Gaitowska, and Anastasia is the creator of the Exposé documentary and project. And Anastasia, do you want to describe what inspired you to create that project and also just what that's about and what that is?
Great. Thank you so much, John, for inviting me to your podcast. And my name is Anastasia. I'm producer and director for Exposé, like you mentioned. And what inspired me to create this documentary was an idea in my imagination, which came in 2018, December 6th, when I left abusive relationship I was in. And I had this desire to create a project where with another survivors who went through what I went through and who overcame that pain and actually recover and are living happy life and are in new relationships. So I crave to see example of somebody who left the relationship and is living on a different frequency, is happy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was back in Spain. And actually, I decided to challenge myself and make my dream come true, which was study in LA, acting and film. So I moved to LA, and slowly but persistently, I was surrounding myself with people who are in the film, giving me advices. And that's how I opened Facebook group, which is right now the foundation for the whole documentary.
Right. Yeah, you've created quite a network. And you've really, one of the things that I think you could add to, even though networker isn't really a job title, that's something that certainly I think describes you. You definitely bring people together with this. You know, because one, I think that there's a lot of strengths. There's a lot of things you've been through that you know, play to that strength. One is you've lived in a lot of different places. You're originally from Poland, you've lived in Spain, you've moved to, you know, LA, and like, you know, all of those things require networking. And also, I like the fact that what the documentary does, like you mentioned, is it takes an issue that normally is, you know, treated with such morbidity and with such, and it can be so depressing, and it shows the resiliency of it. It shows like the phoenix is rising from the ashes, rather than like, you know, just the people who are still down in the dumps. And not that those people aren't still important, but it shows, as you said, the survivor mentality rather than the victim mentality. And I think that's so important. Why was that so? What made you recognize that that was such an important thing that you wanted to highlight?
I just wanted to add that I like to use a word thriver, not survival.
Thriver,
right?
okay, gotcha.
Thriver, yeah. So I think that it gives you a more power, I guess.
Right.
I like to call myself also thriver, not a survival, because survival, it's automatically connects with survival mode, at least for me.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And I want to be in creative mode, and that's why I like to use, for people I work with, another thrivers. So also because of it's a change of image, it's a total transformation you go through as you heal your body, your body, right, after the sexual, physical abuse, your mind after emotional abuse, your soul after the spiritual abuse, right? So it is total transformation. That's why I decided to use the word thriver. So what made me, what was the question? Why did I decided to?
Why did you decide to highlight? Why was that so important for you to highlight? What helped you recognize that that was such an important thing for you to highlight?
You mean the documentary, why it became such a big topic for me?
Why that aspect, like why the resiliency aspect was so important for you to highlight rather than the victimhood aspect?
Right. So it was, I realized that that desire I had when I left the relationship to meet people who overcame that relationships, it's not just my desire, but it could be a globally
Sure,
global
absolutely.
desire. And
Yeah.
so I wanted to bring empowerment, and also to don't hide it. I was feeling depressed and suicidal, right, when I left. So I needed something what will give, it was intuitive voice also.
Right.
And feeling many times when I will be alone, that alone meditating, that this is one of my purposes.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It just
Like,
kept coming back to you.
right. And another thing is the statistics, which we know about it, right? Like 1 on 4 women and 1 on 6 men get
Right.
sexually physically assaulted. Another thing was with pandemic, which actually increased the rate, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's when I actually stopped waiting, because I was at the beginning a little bit waiting when I will get my degree and get another certificate and get more, like not enough, not feeling I got what it takes to make documentary, because I've never done a documentary before. And so I was questioning if just my desire, passion is enough.
Right. Yeah.
Myself with another people who are having more resources and they don't do a documentaries.
Yeah.
Right? So I realized, I had to make some mindset work again, go inside me and work one-on-one to understand that, I will regret if I don't do it now. So with COVID, it just speed up that process of doing the documentary.
Right. And that's so.
I'm sorry, I wanted to add.
Oh no, it's totally fine. Please keep going.
I understood that it didn't start with me, and it's not about me, that there are previous maybe 8 generations, like in my situation, and survivors I talk with, it didn't start with them. Many times there are, their grandparents were going through similar relationship issues. Not always, but it happens. So I realized that I'm part of something, and that I want to, follow that intuition, because it is like I met you unfolding story.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
The living well the same way. I had no idea when I started I'm going to attract this group of amazing thrivers as well.
Right.
So
yeah, absolutely. And I think that what you mentioned is so important, that you were like, oh, I'll wait till this happens, or I'll wait till that happens, or I'll wait till I have qualification or this certification or this degree or that degree, all for your voice to be heard, and you're like, oh, but wait, this is a generational issue, and literally, like, people wait. This has been on a macro level, on a worldwide level, people have been waiting generations for this to really be, for their voices to be heard on the global scale and on the level of diversity that I'm envisioning. And so you just made that happening. What was, and I think this is one of the questions that we talked, that really fascinated me about this. How did you get such a diverse array of stories, and why was it so important for you to get like so much diversity in this project?
Right. So thank you so much for this question. And also I wanted to appreciate your words and your kindness, and express that I'm your reflection as well. That we like in others what reflects in us as well.
Right.
So I think that, I wanted to add thank you for what you are doing and helping thrivers, survivors to heal through, together with Living Well and your coaching business.
I appreciate that.
Yes, totally. And so okay, so the question was again,
I think it was just what made it so important for you to focus on getting such a diverse group of people to be a part of this project, and how did you do that? How did you accomplish that?
All right, so it's a great question. So I felt that one of the purposes could be show that abuse happens regardless of the culture or nationality of the the degrees, education, or the level of finances, color of skin, or language we speak, or sexuality. We have like transsexuals, people who are transsexual or bisexual, hetero, homosexual. So to show, to break some stigmas, right? Some mental images about that abuse happens only to certain group of people, but just show bigger image. And I guess I'm not the only one doing this right now. There's millions of people who are doing projects, especially, foundations, but I realize I can do what I can do. And just to add sparkling energy to this and to this movement.
Sparkling energy, like the dress you're wearing.
Right, I like sparkles.
Yeah.
Right. So and if I would not do that, somebody else would do that. So I just feel blessed and grateful to be part of it. And I think that it is a blessing for me to listen to those stories and the trust and belief people give me. And I honor that. And that's why I'm very passionate about that, because I am able to see how the lives of people I work with, how it's changing, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And one of the things that, and you mentioned that there are other people covering this issue and covering some of the diversity of this issue and things like that. But when I look because I'm part of the Facebook group that you are in, because of that where you have collected this diverse group of both of survivors, thrivers, and also people, if they have not been through the situation, who have encountered these situations as professionals or experts on it. And one of the things that has shocked me about it is the scope of diversity that your project has is really unlike a lot of ones that I've seen. I mean, it really is incredible, or at least the network that you've built. Like really the level, the amount of people who are from different parts of the world and the balance of the different parts of the world that they're from. It's pretty incredible. And I think you shouldn't sell yourself short on that. But the one of the things that that you mentioned is that this is a universal problem. And actually, I think that recently the Washington Post wrote an article about calling this, and you mentioned that that COVID was one of the things that exacerbated this domestic abuse issue. And I think the Washington Post recently, if it was the correct newspaper that I have, called it the shadow pandemic. And so what do you think the root cause of this issue of domestic abuse is, both in general and also in the context of the pandemic?
I love this question. I was thinking about this question. I can say since few months, as I try to find the reasons. And I think it didn't started with us, the whole topic of domestic violence.
Right.
So we need to study the history and the role of female and male to understand, or even the rights for a woman in United States, right? It was legalized 100 years ago, right? In 1920. So
it's been a gradual process, but yeah, the voting rights at the very least, if I have that right, I think you're correct.
Right. So it's all about, not allowing somebody to speak. It is emotional abuse too, right? I believe. So giving somebody the right to vote, it is some way discriminating. So anyways, it started before we were born.
Sure.
And I think I need to study more that to answer this question. I don't know their answer, the response, but I think the solution for that would be educating, especially young generation and children, about boundaries and the power they have by saying no, and really feeling they can express their no in different ways, by speaking, by physical no, or if they need, if that doesn't work, going to look for a help, right? Somebody else. So to actually train children to either fight or fly, never freeze. Because when we freeze, that's when we don't do anything, and that's when the PTSD that's the only one mode when PTSD is developed.
Right, exactly. And freeze is different than pausing, because pausing is like you're taking a second to assess the situation. Freezing is like you're paralyzed by the fear, and that's a different reaction. And I think it's I really like the fact that you mentioned the importance of teaching, younger generations and younger people about boundaries and relationships and stuff, because that's something that actually I've mentioned as a possible, area of interest of mine, because when I think about it, like, who prepares you in school? I think that there should be a course in school on healthy relationships. There's sex ed and things like that, but that's really more about human reproduction than it is about like getting into what is a healthy relationship, how do we set boundaries for each other, and things like that, because that kind of stuff really is kind of complicated stuff. And even though some of us have good role models in our lives to teach us that stuff, not all of us do. And if we had someone who was able to come into the school system and teach those things to people at the high school level in this country, or, over in Europe, I think that, the secondary school level, and in other areas of the world, colegio or college or whatever it may be,
Right.
it's one of the I think it's a really important thing. And I think boundaries, what you mentioned, is really important too, because I think that we're living in an age where we really are having to have a discussion about boundaries, especially in the wake of the Me Too movement. And I think that one of the things that I mentioned to people is that it's okay to nudge on boundaries a little bit, but the second that someone puts up a stop sign, that's when you have to stop. You have to say, because like part of human relationships is that we don't always know where the boundaries are, and we have to find out where they are by taking risks sometimes. But then the second that we know where they are, we have to respect those boundaries.
Right. So we need to educate both, like, the female energy and the male energy,
right?
The gender or trans and energy. Right. So, there is actually a movie which my girlfriend's doing about domestic violence in Sri Lanka.
Okay, go ahead, plug it if it's okay with her.
Just a little bit, because
Okay.
it's going to be released, but
gotcha.
the point is that I watched the trailer.
Okay.
And, and it's part of the culture. For me, it was shocking to really see that it is part of the culture for a man when they get married to own a woman. So he explains many times, many times men, because of it's physically bigger, right? Just them saying, it's my woman, I can beat her. That's my saying that to the policemen, right? Where there is not enough authority in Sri Lanka. There's different culture, right? There.
Sure.
And it actually was shocking for me to listen to some of those stories and see that there are some people who have no way else than to live this way or go out, leave the country. Like it is also in Russia, people are leaving, because of the government, and they're recently also not legalizing domestic violence as a crime. So the only one way becomes escaping your own country, to escape your husband, your boyfriend, whoever, or your girlfriend if you are a man.
Wow, that was a really amazing way that you just put that, is that sometimes like escaping your husband or your wife when you're in an abusive situation becomes synonymous with escaping your country based on the laws and the cultural practices that are in place. And that's an amazing way that you just put that, and that's just kind of a like mind-blowing realization there. And then there's actually the issue, and I've talked about this with other people who've come on here before, where sometimes people, when they migrate to other countries, they become susceptible to domestic violence because of the fact that, people can take advantage of them because of their immigration status.
Right.
And can you, and I think you've mentioned that to, I think you've mentioned that to me as well. I know another guest of mine has, who was on the show, but I think you've mentioned that to me as well. Would you mind talking a little bit more about that?
Right. So that's an interesting topic. Thank you for mentioning. So we also talk, like in the documentary Expose,
Mm-hmm.
also we are talking about immigrants in United States coming from Mexico, different countries, and being actually, because of the green card, abused by their
Mm-hmm.
spouse and not able to leave because of the fear of being deported. And so we have lawyers explaining what is VAWA about,
Mm.
which is Violence Against Women Act.
Right.
Violence Against Women Act, which
Yeah.
allows you to get your green card without
Mm-hmm.
staying in that relationship. So, and
Mm-hmm.
what's great about this petition is that they legalize emotional abuse as a crime, like abuse.
Oh,
And
wow.
also that the person who abuses you, they're not going to prosecute them. They're just going
Mm-hmm.
to, or check that and take further steps to go to the court. They're just going to protect you in the way, hey, you're going to receive your green card. You don't need to stay with this person. And
Mm-hmm.
we are not going to prosecute this case to the court.
Right.
It's not, let's be honest, right? Like 77% of this type of relationships are not reported,
Right.
and
Yeah,
at least in the
absolutely.
United States. So because of the risk of being killed, which happens frequently, right? When you
Yeah.
actually
Right.
when you go to make report, right? When you make a report, so so it's a lot of diversity in United States. Also, it depends of the state as well.
Right.
Yeah, but I guess yeah, my point was that there's a different type of abuse when it comes to immigrants, because they are threatened, especially when they have children, to
Mm-hmm.
that the children will stay with the spouse in the country. They will have to be get deported, and and leaving your
Right.
children inside the country, or that they are not allowed to study or go to work or
Mm-hmm.
go to gym. They're not allowed to make shoppings, different things.
Right. Depending
Yes.
on what type of visa they have, that can impact it. If my understanding is correct. And also,
Right.
depending on their status, if they overstay their visa and they're in an abusive situation, they're going to be much more reluctant to go to the authorities than someone who is, here. Now, obviously, a lot of these people who we're talking about are here legally. Like, I'm not trying to say that the people who are affected by this are only here illegally or undocumented, but that is an even greater risk for those people, I would imagine, because they're even more afraid to go to the authorities for that reason. And then there's also, depending on what type of visa you have certain freedoms versus other types of visas. Am I correct in that?
We need to ask the lawyer, but yeah, yeah.
Okay, gotcha. That's probably a smart idea. So
Mainly,
what?
the VAWA applies to
Mhm.
immigrants who are married to American or citizens who have American citizenship.
Gotcha. Okay.
So in different situations, I'm not informed about, but I
Sure.
think it's a great topic to explore. And yeah, and there are immigrants in Europe as well, in Spain, right in my country. So I think it's globally
Hmm.
um, there is a higher risk of abusive relationships when you are immigrant. Also, that's what the statistics shows. So
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So what do you think the key to moving forward with prevention of, well, not only prevention of domestic abuse and intimate partner violence is, like, what do you think the key to moving forward with that prevention is, but also what do you think the key to moving on from it is after you've gotten out of it?
right. So what is the key to move on after you left abusive relationships?
Yeah,
Mhm. Right.
right.
Well, I think it can be very individual,
Mhm.
right? I can share my experience or my
Yeah, sure.
experience. But I think the most important is to try as many things as it's possible until something works.
Right,
And
right,
don't quit on that just because of, for some people, therapy, like cognitive therapy, works better. And for people with PTSD, there are more somatic approaches or
right.
rapid eye movement therapies. And also to understand that we cannot escape from the causes of being for years
Hmm.
in abusive relationships. Is like a chronic disease on your, the anxiety it brings,
Interesting.
the insomnia, nightmares, digestive problems, or maybe some headaches, or
Hmm.
different issues that are just symptoms of not of our psyche, which is
Hmm.
disturbed.
Yeah, yeah.
And
So it's about,
mhm.
so you're saying it's about management rather than cure?
Well, there's a cure, I believe, right? But
Okay.
yes, I think, well, that healing is possible fully. And my point is to check how much there is a variety of approaches,
Right.
and also maybe try group therapies, right?
Sure.
Or try different spiritual rituals that
Hmm.
there is more just than sitting in the sofa with somebody else in front of you, and not feeling maybe always comfortable with. And also realize that is a gift for you. It can be a gift. Okay, like I
Right.
understand in my life, I had two abusive relationships,
Hmm.
and I see them that they happen for me so I can become less selfish and become more aware and connected with others, and
Hmm.
allow me to discover you and another
Yeah.
people, the project I'm doing. So to shift the mindset and shift the perspective that this is not just about me, and that maybe you can write a book, or maybe you can start a
Hmm.
podcast, or maybe you can share your story in some shelter, or
Hmm.
as a way to expand your own experience, because of the feedback you get many times. It's priceless, and that's
Right.
a possibility to make a difference in somebody's lives that many times become a drive for somebody to share their story.
Yeah,
And if you
absolutely.
don't feel like sharing your story because it's triggering you, that I don't recommend that.
Yeah.
Right, only when you feel like, hey, I went through therapy, and
Hmm.
I have this need to actually share my story. What are the ways for me, right? That's the shift from surviving to thriving, when we become creative and we are no more living in fear or shame, yeah, or in the past. We live
Right.
finally here now, and we can design the future. Or we have,
You
yeah.
no, go ahead. I'm sorry. Please finish that because you were on a roll.
We can see clearly the path, right? Like they say, crystal clear. I don't
Yeah.
know what does it mean really fully, but I guess that's the we start to listen our intuition and
Right.
be connected and grounded, right?
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. You used a word that I really was happy that you used, which was perspective. And I think that, and this is true of really anything, I think, in life, is that I think the second we stop viewing pain as a punishment and instead start using it for perspective, like as a tool for perspective, it's something that we can use to our advantage. It become then pain and joy just become things that are then pain and joy stop being things that are reward and punishment, which are things that we tie to our self-worth, and they just become tools for awareness. So it's like joy. Oh, this is leading me towards joy. Okay, maybe I'll keep going that direction. Or this is leading me towards pain. Maybe I'll keep going that direction. And you mentioned the situation, like, you don't want to be sitting on a couch uncomfortable. And like, that's such an important thing, because I think that it doesn't have to be abuse does not have to be the threshold to leave a bad situation, and I think that's why so many people stay in abusive situations, is because they keep asking themselves, well, is this really that bad, or is this abuse, or is this, it doesn't have to be. If it's making your life terrible and bad and uncomfortable, and I don't mean like not putting in the effort, like, because obviously, like, we should put effort into things that matter to us and try, but once we're starting to just like, once it's starting to destroy us, we gotta, regardless of who the onus is on for that, or whether it's abuse or not, the second a situation becomes so painful for us that it's starting to destroy us, we have to walk away from it, and abuse does not have to be the threshold for an exit. And I think that was illustrated very beautifully by what you said. What's been your favorite part of the process of creating this project?
Thank you so much for this question. And right, hello. So the most beautiful thing about this project for me was, the freedom to be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And
I like that.
And and allow myself speak up, because of the more I started to speak and I listen the more I listen other stories, the more I started to speak. I also healed even more, right? So it's something I didn't expect at the very beginning. I've never treated this documentary as a therapy for myself.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the biggest insight and discovery for me was that I'm part of some change, right, which is bigger than me, and also that I can be part of somebody else's change. And that's what really drives me as a human being, the ability to be part of change of somebody, to help somebody to change their perspective, or they help them to grow in some way. So I think that they were my main insights.
Okay, awesome. And I love that. Vulnerability is something that is a very, very much a favorite topic of mine. So I think that's an amazing insight. And so just so people know, this documentary, as I understand it, it's starting out as a book, right? And then it's becoming a film. Am I correct in that?
Right. So we have an ebook coming together with a documentary. And as I'm working on the ebook with another co-author.
Okay.
And, we are still, how do you say, deciding on if the ebook will be before or after when the documentary is released. So
gotcha. Okay.
The documentary is going to be released in December this year. So that's what is the answer.
Yeah. And that's the most important part of it. And thank you for letting me participate in it, because that was a very, like just, and if I'm not making it in, we can cut that part out. But, I'm just.
No, you are, absolutely you are. And I'm very grateful to know you and to also have your perspectives, and you as a facilitator for survivors, for their healing. you actually brought another part to understand how we all are responsible, I guess that's the word, for each other, right? Because there's some group of us who never been through abusive relationships like yourself and who feel like, well, this topic doesn't touch me, so I don't care, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
it doesn't need to be that actually, because of it always up to the another part which is not touched by the topic to make a difference, because of, that's understandable that survivors will fight for their rights, and people of this color of skin will fight for their rights, right? But if the another part, the opposite part, will not express their support, that's when it's changing. So I think that that's awakening for the whole population and society to understand that we can make things better, but only if more people like you, who the topic doesn't touch, that they decide to be part of it and support it. Doesn't need to be a huge thing, but just by making if we see somebody struggling at work, us maybe talking with them, right? And or just speaking about emotional abuse.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, it doesn't touch me directly, but it kind of came knocking on my door. It came knocking on my door, and it was like just through the line of work that I was doing and that I am doing now. The line of work that I was doing before wasn't as focused on it, but it frequently was an issue that came knocking on my door and that came across my desk. And with the pandemic, like you said, it came across my desk more and more frequently, and I had to give it a bit of a closer look. And, it started tugging at me a little bit more than a lot of the other issues I was working on, because some of the cases I was working on just were so insane. And these were things that, and I realized how just very I don't know if naive is the right word, but maybe dismissive I had been in the past to some extent about the issue. Ignorant, yes, thank you. Ignorant. I've been kind of ignorant, and and this is the thing, I was more knowledgeable than most people were about it, like the general population, and I was still pretty freaking ignorant about it, and I didn't address it properly, and that's something that I really had to own, and kind of had to look in the mirror at myself and say, for 2 of the 4 years that you've been at this job, you haven't been handling this issue correctly. And maybe you need to make it a greater focus moving forward. And that was one of the reasons that I left my job there were a lot of factors, but that was one of the reasons that I left my job to start my own business, and also to do some of the work that I've been doing with the Living Well and, all that stuff, because I realized how just I realized that my work on this issue, while it wasn't terrible, it definitely needed to improve.
Or that self-realization, self-reflection. Yeah, that's a gift. That's how universe, or whatever you call it, God speaks into us many times, right? That
absolutely
feeling not satisfied with something, or feeling I should be somewhere else. I don't know where, but it's not here.
Right.
And allowing yourself to try something else, I think it's also a way to love yourself.
Right. I agree. Any final thoughts that you want to share, and where can people find you, or what you're doing?
So thank you so much for being on your show. It's a gift for me. And you can find me on exposenetwork.com. That's the website. Or that girl who made the documentary Instagram, and or my podcast, which is Expose as well.
Right.
And we have also a Facebook group. I would be happy to invite you if you have a story to share, or you would like to support this project. And what I would like to add, that it has been a journey for me, a journey of many times I said I'm not going to do that because of I didn't believe I could at the beginning, and then slowly realizing that I can.
Right, right.
And allowing myself to speak, to share, to open up my story, because I was feeling before like a victim and blaming my past and blaming people and things, and feeling ashamed of sharing my story even with my parents, right?
Mhm.
Which I did recently and really helped me.
Wow.
And it's funny because if I share my story to strangers or therapies, and I never did with people I really love the most in my life, because of
That's
it was
amazing.
painful. Thank you. It was painful for me to share because of I was isolated for a long time from them
Mhm.
by that, in that relationship, and I just thought I was protecting them by not
Mhm.
letting them know later when I left what happened. But I was just living in survival mode because of I
Right.
left, but I was still living the survival mode life of
Mhm.
isolation and being all by my own, which I am resourceful, I can do it, but I am depriving myself the love from my family and friends
Mhm.
and people around, and I don't need to do it by myself. And thanks God, because of I will die if I had to do it by myself. So I discovered that there's a power in community, there's a power in connection, there's a power in networking. There are, for any idea, there will be people and resources coming from outside and from inside of you. And you need to many times ask, and even sounds crazy for your mentality, like people will not agree, just do it, because of, yeah, if you don't ask, you don't receive. And when you ask bigger for bigger things, you receive bigger things too. And even when you don't receive what you want now, maybe another doors need to be knocked knocked on.
Yeah.
And yeah, to have faith. And so yeah, it has been for me, when I see myself today and also see people I work with, like their lives, since I started to work on this documentary during the pandemic, it has been now 2 years almost, right? In
Mhm.
March. So
Yeah.
I see how they transform. Some of them became holistic coaches or narcissistic
Mhm.
recovery coaches. They are getting their degrees, and
Right.
and I see, kind of find myself in them, and probably they find themselves in each other. And some of those connection become friendships, and I receive a lot of, many friends, and
Mhm.
really deep connection,
Mhm.
which are bringing a lot of light and like a family uh,
Right.
for me in that spiritual sense. So yeah, thank you so much. And also the connection with you and knowing your story,
Yeah.
knowing where you're coming from, where you are going, and how much you are bringing, who you are, and how much you are giving. And
Mhm.
so I'm also, your story, what you're doing, is also inspirational for me, and it's keeping me also on the way.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I couldn't be here without the support from you, from Living Well, right?
Mhm.
And so many people, which Nicole Bigelov.
Yeah, Nicole Bigelow. Yeah. Um,
So
the V and the W at the end. That's the Polish there. It's all good though. It's all good. It's all good. No, Anastasia, thank you so much. And I'm really glad that I've met you too. You've been an inspiration to me as well. And that was one of the most heartfelt wrap ups, I think that that I've had at the end of this podcast. I love it when people just speak from the heart, like you just did then. And that was beautifully put. And I think what I tell people is that on this show, my favorite thing is when people start to speak like they've forgotten that they're being recorded, not in the sense that they start being careless and irresponsible, but more just like they get comfortable and they start being vulnerable and they just start putting it all out there. And that's exactly what you just did. You exposed yourself. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Let me rephrase that. Wait a minute. Oh, geez. I don't think I'm going
but
to
we
edit
have
that
a
out.
video. We have a video just in case.
Yeah,
So,
right. Yeah, people will know what I meant. There we go. Okay. You exposed your soul. There we go. You
right.
exposed your soul for all to see and for all to hear. There we go. Okay. I saved it. and you made it happen.
We made it happen. Thank you so much. Because of you, yeah, it was amazing interview because of you allow me to open myself, right? And
Right.
that was a relationship or transmission, right, of energies.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
you helped me to open my heart. So you're a
Right.
great interviewer, and I'm looking forward to continue working with you. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Anastasia. This has been great.